Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different. We're not going to be working on the city today. Instead, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the Bricklink Designer Program Series 4 submissions. And we're doing this because the crowdfunding goes live in just a few days here. At the time of release of this video, if you're watching it the day that it goes live, it is January 31st. But the designer program goes live in 4 days after this, so February 4th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So mark your calendars for that if you're interested in any of these sets. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about, keep watching the video because I'm going to go in depth. I'm going to tell you what the Bricklink Designer Program is, what each of the 5 sets are in this series, how you can buy any of these sets if you are interested, and to top it all off, which ones I will be buying as well. So there's a lot of cover today, so let me just jump right in. So what exactly is the Bricklink Designer Program? The Bricklink Designer Program is essentially a collaboration between Bricklink and LEGO, and it is an open invitation for anyone to submit designs that follow Bricklink's submission guidelines. It is not LEGO Ideas. LEGO Ideas is its own separate thing, and there are differences between the two, which I will cover in just a second here. But the couple of caveats with the Bricklink Designer Program is that it is a one-time limited run of sets. So if you see a set in the Series 4, which releases next week, or in any of the future series, just know that you have one chance to buy it. You have one window, which I believe is about 3 weeks. And so after that window is up, or if it gets sold out, whichever comes first, then that's it. You can't buy it anymore unless you go on Bricklink or eBay to buy a copy off of someone else. And that usually involves paying a premium on it. So if you want these sets, I highly recommend that you take action on it now. The Bricklink Designer Program produces up to 30,000 of each set. So once it gets up to that 30,000 limit, then again, it gets sold out. And the minimum is actually 3,000. So if a set is only crowdfunded for 2,500 units, then it will not get made into a set. But I haven't seen that happen before, and so that really hasn't been a problem up until this point. Each series consists of 5 sets, and the sets range about around the 2,500 piece mark. Some of them are significantly less than that, with less than 1,000 pieces, and some of them are pushing 4,000 pieces, but there is a lot of unique stuff going on. There's a lot of really cool designs as well. And so the Bricklink Designer Program sets are essentially designed by fans, people like you and I, and these designs are for experienced builders. Bricklink is giving LEGO fans the opportunity to be the fan designer of their own set from essentially start to finish. And there are detailed submission guidelines about, the criteria about all of it, but LEGO sets are held to a different standard, and there's a whole team behind the entire process, including the sets design, the minifigures design, the box design, and everything like that. But the Bricklink Designer Program differs from that in that it's all fan-made, which is really, really awesome to see. And so Bricklink works with the submission winners, so that's really cool. But the LEGO Ideas sets are essentially reimagined by the LEGO designers in order to create a set that is up to LEGO's standards. And so the Ideas sets are essentially remodeled, whereas the Bricklink sets are not, like I said. And so before I get started in talking about each of the individual sets here, you have a limit of you're able to buy up to 2 of each model. And so that way, no one person buys all of them or a significant portion of them. So you can buy 2 of each of the 5 designs here. So if you want to buy 10 sets, 2 of each, you're more than welcome to do that, but it will cost quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. But with all of that being said, the Bricklink Designer Program sets are really cool. And so we are going to actually get into starting to discuss the Series 4 sets right now. And so actually we are going to start with one of the more interesting ones, which is the Medieval Seaside Market. So the Medieval Seaside Market right here is $230 US, and it comes with 2,560 total pieces and 9 minifigures. And the build consists of a seaside castle with a market and port inside of it. And you can actually rearrange this as well, which we'll get into in just a minute. The focal point is the rear side of the castle instead of where the gate usually is on the front. The interior, I guess you can call it, on the interior of the L shape is where the docks are and the port and the market is. And so it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of cool merchants here. There's like a blacksmith. There's a fortune teller, there's someone selling fish, and there is a wine cellar as well. So that looks pretty cool. And so this set is also partially modular as well, which is really cool to see. And so the main tower can come apart along with the sections. So the sections can actually break into multiple pieces, which is pretty cool to see. And so you can actually get into the interior details, which are actually kind of limited, to be honest with you. The only real details are the wine cellar and the barrels of wine underneath where the gate is. And so that is kind of unfortunate that that is the only interior detail in the entire model, except for the office on the second floor here, which does look pretty cool. And I'm putting up a couple images of closer up shots of that. So again, it looks pretty good, but for a $230 model, I would expect a little bit more on the inside of it instead of just an all exterior build. But the 9 minifigures that it comes with is a snake charmer, the baker, the fisher, the blacksmith, the wine cellar, 3 guards, and a tax collector or the harbor master. And the tax collector is the one who has the office. And so the dimensions of it are 17 inches by 19.8 inches by about 13.2 in height. So that's pretty cool to see. It has some decent width to it. It has some decent height to it as well. And so it's pretty sizable. And so that's pretty much it for a quick glimpse of the main model here. The only side builds include a horse and buggy, which the horse unfortunately has a very short chain on it, and so it doesn't really have a lot of distance between the cart and itself. So that's a little unfortunate, but it does look really good. And then the only other thing is this little boat here, and the boat might actually be my favorite part of the whole model here. I think it looks great. It has a lot of intricate details in it. The sails look great, and obviously it doesn't float, but it is brick built, and so I think that adds a lot more character and detail to it. But overall, this set looks good, and the price per piece, if that's something that you're interested in, is less than 10 cents a piece, so that is pretty good to see as well. The designer of the model also included a rebrickable page to free building instructions for 3 expansion modules and 1 alternative build, which is really interesting. Actually, normally when people design sets, whether it's the Lego group or fan submissions, they only design 1 model and then that's it. But if you're doing the Creator 3-in-1s or this model right here, that's really interesting to see that the designer already included an alternative model to take this apart and to build something else with official instructions. So that's really cool to see. And so overall, this looks really good. And so shout out to Bricks Fan UI for designing this. And now we are going to move on to the next design. All right, so coming up next here is actually the smallest of the wave. Surprisingly, the Merchant Boat by Nicholas Carlier is the second submission we're going to be taking a look at here. For $170 you get 2,180 pieces, 4 minifigures, and it has 3 stickers in it as well. And this boat is a really interesting concept, actually. I've never seen anything like this before, and so it looks really good. I quite like it. It does come apart into different sections here, which is nice to see, but the Merchant Boat has the overall shape and design of a steamboat, which is pretty cool. And to give you a quick rundown of the dimensions, the height is about 28 centimeters, the width is about 24.5, and the length is about 40. So that is really interesting to see, actually. It's pretty sizable, and so I guess that's why it's about $170. But the colors are kind of muted on it, and for something that is more of a fantasy build, I would expect a little bit more color in it. But it looks good, but there's not an official close-up shot of the minifigures on Bricklink's website. However, I think the figures look good. I do wish that there was about 1 or 2 more though, and so that is a negative point from me in terms of the build and the minifigures, but you get almost 2,200 pieces for $170. And so I think that looks pretty good. I think it's on paper, it looks good, and it looks sizable as well. I think it has a lot of potential to be really cool. And also there's a nice design in it as well. It can actually roll along your table, and the side parts on the side do move along with the boat. So that is pretty cool to see. They rotate when the boat moves. And so I do really like the interior details as well. There's a lot going on here, and it's a very small space, but the space is used very efficiently. And so like I said, this is a really interesting model, and I think it's pretty cool. And once again, it's $170, and Shout out to Nicholas Carlier for the submission. They did a fantastic job designing this, and so now let's check out the next one. All right, so this is where it gets interesting. If you guys know me, I love my trains, and I'm really excited to see a Wild West train actually, because the most recent seriously Wild West train that we got was from the Lone Ranger, and that one I think gets blown out of the water by this, to be totally honest with you. Now, granted, this is a lot more expensive than the Lone Ranger one retailed for at $280 here, but it comes with almost 3,200 pieces, 12 minifigures, and it has 17 stickers in it. So this is pretty sizable, and it's also over 40 inches long. I'll put the dimensions on the screen for you, but this train looks fantastic to me. I love the actual engine itself. The locomotive looks great, and the brick-built cow catcher as well is a really nice touch. And there are a lot of stickers in this, unfortunately, but I think that is to be expected because you can't brick build all of these details and not jack up the price with all of the pieces. So that is something to keep in mind as well. But I really appreciate that it uses the Orient Express coupling rods on the sides here. I think they look great. And so the locomotive has a lot of unique details on it, and I think it looks really good. The tender is probably the weakest out of all of them for me, just because it's so simple and I don't like how the wheels are set up on it, but I understand that is how to officially motorize the entire train. You just put the battery box and a train motor underneath, and that is pretty much it. You'd be ready to go. So that's great. You don't need to do any extra modifications. So that is a very simple plug and play, which is great, especially if you already have the motor and the battery box in your collection. Next up here is this flat car with a piano and a safe on it and a couple crates as well. This looks pretty good to me. I don't see why each end has 2 axles, but I think it looks good for what it is. I might end up modifying this just to make it a single axle at either end, just to make it a little bit more realistic. But overall, I think this looks good, and I think it's a nice detail to have to the train as well. And the next one here is the passenger coach. I think this looks great. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the entire model here. The brown and dark red accents look great together, and the undercarriage detailing looks great as well. And I'm extremely happy with this. I think it looks great. I would love to have this in my hands just to see what exactly it looks like in hand and on the track, because in the promotional photos that they're showing right now, the coach is on 2 track segments and it's nearly the length of both of them. So that's a pretty sizable piece of rolling stock. Unfortunately, the Orient Express ones do look nicer in my opinion. I do think those look really good, but this does look good for what it is. And the last car here is a freight car, or like a box car. And I think this looks great. This is actually my favorite part of the entire model here. I think this looks really, really good. And I think it looks even better than everything else that we've just taken a look at here in the set. But the side paneling on it looks great. And I think the scale of it is what really sells it for me. I think it looks good. And also something to note, the entire train uses magnetic couplers. So if you have other trains in your collection already, like from the City line or from the old Creator Expert sets that have the magnetic couplers, then you can just plug and play with everything else in your collection, which is really nice to see. Up next here is the minifigures, and you get 12 of them, and they are pretty generic, but I do think that they look pretty good, and I love getting more minifigures. That is really, really nice to see. And some of these you could even use in a city layout or just in general. You know, some of these don't have to be tied to the Western theme. And so the only other 2 builds in the set, besides the train base, of course, is the water tower and windmill. Both of these look fantastic, and these are very interesting and intricate builds. I'd be very curious to see what they look like on the inside, especially that water tower. And the cactus on here looks nice as well, and a lot of the dead plants look really good too. And also, the designer of this, iLucky, this is the second design that they have created for the Bricklink Designer Program that has been turned into a set. The first one was the General Store. So huge shout out to iLucky for not only making one Bricklink Designer Program set, but actually for making a second one as well. So the General Store was from a previous series and it is not included in this, but the designer also made this train here, which is really cool to see, and it's almost like you're almost starting to build a world here. So that's really cool that the designer is having these cohesive builds to go together, and I think that's really cool. But overall, like I said, $280 is very steep, And the Orient Express is $300. That is probably the best set you can compare it to, but the comparisons will come in due time. But just looking at it as a set on its own, I think it has a lot of potential here. It is almost as long as the Orient Express, and it has a lot more going on with it. I think it has the side builds, and it has the different types of cars as well. Instead of having passenger coaches, it has a passenger coach and a freight car and a flat car. And so the 12 minifigures are a great addition as well. And so once again, shout out to iLucky for this design and also creating a second design for the Bricklink Designer Program. But now let's check out the fourth design on the list. So next up is the Siege Encampment here by Sleepless Night. The set is $230 US. It comes with 2,598 pieces, and it comes with a whopping 18 minifigures and comes with 11 stickers. This is actually insane to me. It's like a giant castle battle pack, and there's all different kinds of tents and siege machines, and there's a big trebuchet as well. And there's all different kinds of animals. There's a horse, a cow, and all these smaller animals as well, like birds and squirrels, it looks like. And so this is really, really cool to see. I don't think LEGO would ever make this on their own, especially at this scale. And so I think this is really cool. The trebuchet actually works, which is really, really cool to see. And there's a lot of intricate details in here as well. The tents are all brick built. They're not made of cloth, and each little module feels like it has its own story attached to it. And also in the official images of this on Bricklink's website, you can see it's combined with the Lion Knight's castle, which is obviously not included, but you can see how the pieces from this set, how easily they integrate into the Lion Knight's castle, which is really cool. And so if you have the Lion Knight's castle in your collection, this is definitely something to consider. And so again, this looks really, really good. You can also pair this with the Mountain Fortress, which was a previous Bricklink Designer Program set, if that's something that you're interested in. But the set also, if you decide to buy two of them, it has extra elements and stickers included to swap factions from Black Falcon to Lion Knights. So if you have a Lion Knights castle and you want to invade it, essentially, you can use the Black Falcon Knights. Or if you want to add to your Lion Knight army, you can use the Lion Knight stickers and elements as well, which is really, really cool to see. The designer really didn't have to go the extra mile for that, but they did. And so huge shout out to Sleepless Night again for that. That is really, really awesome. And I'm not going to go through the entire list of everything here. There is so many different sections and different elements here, but there's so much going on and there's so much play value in this that I really think that this is a solid contender for something that you should consider buying. And the final set is Riverside Scholars by Hanwha's. This is a $200 set, and it comes with 2,769 total pieces, 5 minifigures, and 2 stickers. This is a very, very interesting build, and I think it looks really good. There's a lot of potential with this to add it to a fantasy world, and I think it looks really, really good. The back is open. Unfortunately, that is a miss for me personally, but if you're someone who likes to get in and access all the details very easily, that is something good for you then. And overall, this has a nice footprint to it as well. The dimensions of it are about 39 centimeters high, 30 centimeters wide, and nearly 28 centimeters long. So it has a good depth to it as well, and it has good size to it. There's a lot of small animals, and the figures are lacking. Personally, I would love to have seen at least 2 more minifigures. The figures that are included are nice though. And this is actually the 3rd set that Hanwha's has created for the Bricklink Designer Program. The Mountain Windmill and the Ocean House were previous sets from previous waves. And so that is, again, like iLucky, this is an incredible achievement. So huge shout out to the designer of this. But overall, I think this is a really good set. And so now that we've discussed what the Bricklink Designer Program is, what the sets in the Series 4 wave are, now I'm going to talk about whether you should buy each of these. And I'm also going to talk about which ones I'm going to personally buy as well. So we're going to go down the list here. We're going to start from the top again, and we're going to start with the Seaside Market. The Seaside Market, like I said, $230 here, and it has 2,560 pieces with 9 minifigures. And if you are into castles, and if you want to expand your Lion Knight's castle, or you have the medieval blacksmith, or you have the medieval town square, or anything like that, I think this is a great addition to that. However, I don't own any of those sets, and as nice as a castle display would be, I don't have the space for it. And so personally, I will be passing on it, but I do think it looks nice. But a couple negative points from me personally are that there's not a lot of interior space and there's not a lot of access to the interiors that are there. And so you have to pull apart the entire set in order to just reach the wine cellar. So that's not a bonus for me. That's more of a negative. But I do really like the boat and I do like the playability with it. But overall, this is a pass for me. But if you're someone who's really, really into castles, this might be something that you want to consider. Up next is the merchant boat, and like I said earlier, this is a very, very interesting design, and huge props to the creator of this for going out of the box and really, really coming up with something that's interesting and unique and also looks good from every angle. Unfortunately, I will be passing on this $170 for 2,180 pieces and 4 minifigures. It's an okay value, but for me personally, it's not something that I'm interested in. I do think it has a lot of potential to sell out though. And so I will talk about that at the end of the video, which ones I think will sell out and which ones will meet the minimum of 3,000. So stay tuned for that. But overall, I think this is a very good concept, but it's a miss for me personally, and I will not be picking this one up. Third on the list is the Wild West train. We've talked fairly in depth about this already, so I'm going to skip over going over all the details again, but just to remind you of the basics, $280, 3,192 total pieces, 12 minifigures, and 17 stickers. And this is the one that I will be picking up. This is my favorite out of the 5 here. I think it looks great, and it's pretty sizable as well. Obviously, $280, it is the most expensive of the wave, and it is pretty steep. $280 is not an insignificant amount of money, but I do think that it looks good and it has a lot of potential. And so I will be getting this. I will be reviewing it once it arrives in the studio, and I will be comparing it to the Orient Express as well. And hopefully by then I will have some custom trains as well, so I can compare the trains as well. But overall, I think this is a great set, and I will see if there's any negatives. The only negative that I can see at this point in time is the tender. I personally don't like how the wheels are set up on it, but once it gets running around my layout, that might change. And so I'm going to save most of my opinions for it once I buy it and get it in the studio here. Next up is the Siege Encampment, and again, this is $230, 2,598 pieces, 18 minifigures, and 11 stickers. So that is a crazy price per piece, and the number of minifigures is really good as well. So combining all of that, it seems like a good value, but it just seems like you're getting a lot of stuff. You're not getting one big build, like you're not getting a big modular building. The Tudor Corner is the same price as this. You're not getting one unit, you're getting a lot of smaller things. And while that could be cool, if you have a castle diorama, like I said, if you have a big mock of castles and the medieval market and the blacksmith and the Seaside market and also from the Bricklink designer program, then this might be something that you want to pick up. But for me personally, it just looks like a lot of random stuff kind of thrown together into one set. You know, you could easily break this up into 4 or 5 different sets, and it would sell just as well, I think, if it was a real Lego set and you split it up into 4 or 5 different sets. I think it would sell even better than just one big essential battle pack. But this is a miss from me personally. I will not be buying this. And I think the idea is really cool, and I think advertising it with the Lion Knight's castle is a nice touch as well. And I do really appreciate that the designer Sleepless Night went the extra mile to add the extra elements and stickers to switch factions between the Lion Knights and the Black Falcons. I think that's really, really cool, but I'm going to be passing on this one. Again, I don't have a castle diorama and I don't have the space for it, so we're going to be passing on this one for now. But the last model here is the Riverside Scholars. Again, $200, 2,769 pieces, 5 minifigures, and 2 stickers. So decent value there, although the minifigure count seems to be lacking, and I will not be picking this one up. I think it's really interesting, and if you have any of the 2 previous builds by Hanwas, the designer, I think it would fit very nicely in with that. But unless you're building a fantasy thing, I don't see this fitting in anywhere. Like, obviously it's not going to fit into a city. It's not going to fit into any kind of landscape. Even if you had a castle diorama, I don't think this would look proper in it. And so personally, I think it looks good, but it's just not for me. The details on it look nice, but the open back is severely a miss as well. And so now that we've gone through each of the 5 of those and I've told you which ones I'm going to be buying, really quick, I do think that each of the 5 of these will hit the 3,000 unit minimum in order to get made into the limited run of sets. But I don't think all 5 of them will hit the 30,000 unit threshold in order to sell out. I think 1 or 2 of them will sell out. I don't think all 5 of them will. I think the train will. Trains in Bricklink Designer Program's history have done exceptionally well, trains and train stations alike. And so I think the Wild West train will also sell out at the 30,000 unit threshold. And as for one other one, I think it will probably be the medieval Seaside Market. Personally, I think that is the other best contender for this. I think the Riverside Scholars and the Merchant Boat and the Siege Encampment are all good, and I think they'll probably end up between 10 to 20 or 25,000 units sold, but I don't think they'll quite sell out like the medieval Seaside Market and the Wild West train would. And so really quick before we end the video, I want to give you guys a little bit of a fast-paced FAQ just so you guys know what you're going into if you've never done this before. You do get LEGO VIP points, so if you have an insider's account with LEGO, you will be getting points, so definitely make an account if you don't have one already. It is free. You can get up to 2 copies of each design, so you can buy a total of 10 sets if you really want to, but that is pretty steep, and I would not recommend that for your wallet's sake. And so if you choose to buy any of the 5 designs on February 4th or in the window before it sells out, these sets will ship in the summer, so in the July-August range. You will get a notification that this is shipped, and it will show up at your door in hopefully July, but if not, then definitely August. And so this is not something that you will be getting in the near future, so just keep that in mind. You're essentially choosing what you want now, and then 5-6 months later, you will be getting those sets in the mail. And so also another thing to note is that these do not have physical instructions. They are all digital. So if you really hate digital instructions, maybe that's something to consider as well. But I don't think it's a big deal. Personally, I prefer digital instructions. It just cleans up the desk a lot nicer, and it just makes this process for me a lot more efficient. But again, something to note. And so the instructions are also free to download after the fact. So if you wanted to go to a previous Bricklink Designer Program series for a set that you missed out on, or you bought the set and you want to build it, Bricklink's website has every Bricklink Designer Program set's instructions completely for free. So you can go in, you can download it, and you can see all of the building techniques. So if you don't want to spend $280 on a train or $230 on a siege encampment, but you want to see how that trebuchet is made, you can go into Bricklink's website once the sets start shipping, which is going to be around July. You can go in and find those free downloadable instructions. And so while some of these sets might not sell out immediately, and by immediately I mean a couple hours, you have about 3 to 4 weeks to make your decision after February 4th. So if you wake up on February 4th and you look at the designs and you're not totally sold on any of them, you have about 3 to 4 weeks to come back to the website and to place your order then. But some of the sets will sell out within a couple days. Some of them might not sell out at all. So just keep that in mind and just keep checking back in if you don't want to buy it immediately on February 4th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. You should keep checking back in on Bricklink's website to see how many people are buying them and how close it is to that 30,000 unit limit. And so one last piece of Q&A is that this is essentially a pre-order. And so if for whatever reason one of these models does not meet that 3,000 unit threshold to get turned into a physical product, then all of the pre-orders will be canceled and your credit card or whatever card you use will not be charged. So that is not something to be concerned about. And so that's just something to note as well, that again, this is a pre-order, but there is nothing to worry about if you are buying a set and you're placing a pre-order for the set and it does not meet that 3,000 unit threshold for whatever reason. You will not be charged for it. And so I hope that this was informative for you guys. If you've never done this before, or if this is your 4th series of Bricklink Designer Program sets that you've been a part of, make sure to like the video and subscribe, as well as click the bell notification so you don't miss any future uploads, especially once I get that Wild West train finally in the studio in the summer. But if you have any feedback for me, or if there's anything that I missed about these 5 sets, make sure to drop a comment down below. I would love to hear what you guys think and which ones you're going to pick up. And seriously, once again, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.